In 2024, the United States Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, issued this formal advisory, and he declared parental stress and burnout an official public health crisis.
A literal public health crisis, which is, a huge deal.
Right, and the statistics driving that declaration were frankly just alarming. I mean, over 40% of parents report being so exhausted most days that they literally cannot function.
Over 40%, wow.
Yeah, and nearly half say they are just constantly overwhelmed.
Well, when you look at numbers like that, you have to stop seeing individual tired moms and dads, right?
Yeah.
You start seeing a complete structural collapse.
Absolutely. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are tackling a topic that hits incredibly close to home for a lot of you.
Whether you have kids right now or you're planning to in the future, or even if you just watch your friends desperately trying to manage the modern juggle, this is for you.
Exactly. And we're pulling from this fascinating piece in Psychology Today. It's by sociologist Nina Bandelj, and it's titled, "Parental Burnout is a Social Problem, Not a Personal Failure."
Such a great title. And understanding the mechanics of this exhaustion, it'll completely reframe how you view family life.
Yeah, because our mission for this deep dive is to figure out why modern childrearing feels so uniquely depleting right now.
Right, we're shifting the lens.
Shifting it away from that heavy, isolating feeling of individual mom guilt or parent shaming, and really dissecting the massive systemic issues operating behind the scenes.
And I think the terminology we use is a really great starting point for that dissection. Think about the word burnout itself.
Oh, yeah. Like, where did that even come from?
Well, it was coined in the 1970s, but it was specifically used to describe long-term psychological stress from relentless workplace demands.
Okay.
It was literally a diagnostic tool for what happens to an employee when corporate machinery extracts too much from them.
Wow. And now we use it for raising kids.
Exactly. The phrase parental burnout barely even existed like a decade ago, yet today, a word meant for the office completely defines our living rooms.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because taking a corporate term and applying it to raising a human being is just a wild shift in language.
It really is.
But, the more I think about it, the more modern parenting does feel like a highly demanding corporate job.
How so?
Well, it's like a job where you clock in, but you're never allowed to clock out. You have this tiny boss who demands your attention at 3 a.m., expects you to flawlessly manage their volatile emotional states.
Oh, the tantrums.
Right. And requires you to fund their entire existence without paying you a salary.
Yeah.
And, if anything goes wrong with the project, society basically tells you it's entirely your fault.
I love that. That corporate analogy captures the impossible standards perfectly. It really highlights how the home basically turned into a high-stakes workplace.
But how did that actually happen? I mean, structurally.
Well, what's fascinating here is that to understand the mechanics, we have to trace this massive historical shift over the last 100 years.
Okay, take us back.
Historically, children were, bluntly put, economically useful.
Like working on the farm.
Exactly. They helped on the farm, they worked in the family business, they contributed to the household's actual survival, and the labor of raising them was a shared community thing.
Right, everyone pitched in.
But as society modernized and, child labor laws changed, children transitioned from being economically useful to what sociologists call emotionally priceless.
Okay, but wait, I want to push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Isn't investing time and energy into a child who is emotionally priceless just good parenting?
Yes, of course.
Like, why is wanting your kid to succeed suddenly framed as this toxic corporate thing?
It's not that wanting success is toxic. It's the economic logic that quietly infiltrated that emotional bond.
The economic logic.
Yeah. This brings us to the rise of what's called human capital. The concept was popularized by economist Gary Becker. He actually won a Nobel Prize for this framework in 1992.
Okay, human capital, what does that mean in practice?
Well, he began analyzing human beings, their skills, health, knowledge, as forms of capital, much like a factory machine. Yeah, you invest in the machine, it becomes more productive, and it yields a higher economic return.
So we took this beautiful idea that kids are emotionally priceless, but then we started applying like factory-level efficiency metrics to them.
That is the exact core conflict. Over the last few decades, raising a child became universally understood as a project of human capitalization.
Wow.
Parents are now expected to optimize and just constantly develop their children.
Right, because they're assets now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They are emotionally priceless, yes, but they're treated as assets that must be intensely invested in from day one. I mean, the womb is suddenly viewed as the first classroom where you should be like playing Mozart.
Oh, yeah. The headphones on the belly.
Right. And daycare isn't just a safe place for supervision while you work anymore. Now it's early childhood education.
And play isn't just fun. It has to be enrichment.
Yes. Economists have even quantified the return on investment of early childhood education. They claim it yields a 13% ROI for society.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. Because there is a very jarring contradiction in the source material here.
Yeah.
We walk around saying, oh, you cannot put a price tag on a child's love or the magic of childhood.
Right.
Yet we turn around and treat every single decision we make for them like we are managing a highly volatile stock market portfolio.
That is so spot on.
We look at our kids and think, I need to diversify their assets. So we put them in soccer to build teamwork, right? And coding camp for future tech resilience, and piano for cognitive brain development.
The stock portfolio analogy is incredibly apt for explaining this pressure. Because our society is just obsessed with data and metrics and rankings.
Oh, completely.
So when you view a child as a portfolio of skills, parents feel this immense, crushing pressure to make sure their specific portfolio performs well against everyone else's.
And that strips all the joy out of it.
It strips education and childhood of its original civic purpose, too. It's no longer about forming a well-rounded, happy citizen. It's about measurable consequences.
Right.
When you frame the stakes of childhood with an ROI percentage, every single parental choice feels terrifyingly consequential.
Which really explains the financial drain. I mean, you have childcare costs going through the roof and college debt that is basically a mortgage in itself.
It is a mortgage.
But treating your kids like an investment portfolio, it doesn't just drain your bank account. It drains your mind. We aren't just managing their resumes. We are heavily managing their psyches.
Oh, the financial lock-in is only half the story. Our entire culture has become saturated in what the author refers to as therapeutic culture.
Okay, therapeutic culture. What exactly does she mean by that?
It's this cultural shift toward hypersensitivity regarding emotions. It's the constant verbal expression of feelings and endless psychological monitoring.
Like constantly checking in.
Right. Parenting was always an emotional job, obviously, but therapeutic culture has made it uber emotional.
Okay, so what does that actually look like in practice? Because previous generations definitely did not do this.
No, they didn't.
Like, if a kid threw a tantrum over a blue cup in the 1980s, the parents just ignored them or told them to go outside and play.
Yeah, exactly. But in a therapeutic culture, ignoring the tantrum is framed as emotional neglect.
Wow. So what are you supposed to do now?
Today, a parent is told they must get down to eye level, validate the child's feelings about the blue cup, guide them through an emotional regulation exercise.
Take deep breaths.
Right, take deep breaths, process your own frustration in real time so you don't yell, and then self-monitor to ensure you aren't passing on generational trauma.
Oh my gosh. That is a dizzying, infinite loop of psychological self-surveillance.
It's exhausting, and you see this clearly in the sheer evolution of the labels we assign to parents now.
Oh, the labels. We used to just have parents.
Right. Now we have helicopter parents, snowplow parents, jackhammer parents, gentle parents, and tiger moms.
It's like we're just categorizing different styles of emotional management. And the sheer volume of advice feeding this surveillance is staggering.
In an avalanche.
I think about my grandparents, right? They had one book, Dr. Spock. If they had a question, they flipped to the index, read the paragraph, and moved on with their day. Today, there's just this omnipresent barrage of digital advice.
Oh, the shift from a single static source of authority to an endless stream of algorithmic input completely changes the cognitive load on parents.
It's like driving a car while 50 different GPS voices are yelling conflicting directions at you at the exact same time.
That is a perfect image.
Yeah, like one voice says, turn left for gentle parenting. And another yells, recalculating, you must implement strict boundaries.
Yes.
And a third is just screaming, you turn immediately or your child won't get into an Ivy League school.
It's exactly like that.
You open your phone, and the TikTok influencer tells you to trust your instincts, but in the exact same breath, they try to sell you a 23-step baby sleep training masterclass.
It's so predatory. And the source material shares some incredibly relatable anecdotes about this specific pressure cooker.
Oh, like the Kim Kardashian one.
Yes. It mentions Kim Kardashian hiding in her bathroom just to get 30 seconds of peace from her kids. Which really highlights that even limitless wealth doesn't shield you from the psychological exhaustion of modern parenting norms.
No amount of money can buy you out of the mental load.
Exactly. Or consider Australian comedian Sean Sepps. He talks about doom scrolling through pinning WhatsApp parent groups in the middle of the night.
Oh, those WhatsApp groups are fascinating. They masquerade as these helpful tools for, coordinating soccer snacks, but they actually function as arenas for social pressure.
How so?
Well, when a parent replies, "Thanks for the reminder," at 11:00 p.m. about tomorrow's bake sale, it's not just politeness.
Right, it's a signal.
Yes, it's a tiny digital flare sent up to an audience of peers to prove, hey, look, I am an engaged parent. I am optimizing. It's performative exhaustion.
Performative exhaustion perfectly describes it. Parents wear this profound fatigue as a badge of deep care. They assume that if they are this exhausted, it must mean they're doing a great job.
So what does this all mean for the kids?
That's the real question.
Yeah, because with all this optimization, all this emotional monitoring, all this intensive investment, is this pressure actually working? Are we producing a generation of perfectly adjusted super kids?
The ultimate tragic irony of this entire system is that it is actively backfiring.
Really? Backfiring how?
The paradox mentioned in the text is that even when parents recognize the madness and try to listen to advice telling them to just do less or let kids be kids, that advice is immediately internalized as just another stressful item to check off the never-ending to-do list.
Oh, wow. So they schedule the downtime.
Yes. A parent will literally say, okay, tomorrow from 2:30 to 4:30 p.m., I am actively scheduling 2 hours of unstructured time so my child learns to be bored.
That defeats the purpose entirely. You can't schedule spontaneity.
You can't.
You're still managing the lack of management.
Precisely. And this raises an important question. What are the actual tangible outcomes of this exhaustion for the children? The source references social psychologist Jonathan Haidt, who extensively studies what he calls the anxious generation.
The anxious generation. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and while smartphones and social media play a huge role in that, a massive contributor to this anxiety is the hovering. When you manage a child like a high-stakes corporate project, you inherently limit their independence.
Because allowing them to fail or, experience friction is seen as a failure of your management.
Yes. Parents act as snowplows. They're constantly clearing obstacles out of the child's way so the portfolio doesn't take a hit.
Right.
But psychological research shows that limiting unscripted, unmanaged experiences deeply reduces children's resilience.
So they don't learn how to bounce back.
Right. If they never experience boredom or navigate neighborhood conflicts on their own, they don't develop the internal scaffolding required to handle the real world. We are exhausting ourselves to protect them. And in doing so, we are actively harming their mental health.
Wow. And this brings us to a part of the source material that I found deeply unsettling, honestly.
The inequality piece.
Yes. Because it's one thing to say this system makes parents tired and kids anxious. But the article gets into how this privatization of childrearing, this idea that your kid is your sole financial and emotional responsibility to optimize, is an absolute engine for systemic inequality.
But it really is. And to understand how this inequality is engineered, we need to look at a landmark sociological concept.
Let's do it.
In the early 2000s, sociologist Annette Lareau conducted an influential study outlined in her book Unequal Childhoods. She coined the term concerted cultivation.
Concerted cultivation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lareau observed that affluent middle-class parents treat childrearing as a deliberate process of fostering their children's talents and opinions through highly organized adult-led activities.
So they're literally acting as talent agents for their kids.
Essentially, yes.
Right.
And this is contrasted with working-class families who typically employ a strategy of accomplishment of natural growth.
Natural growth, meaning what?
Meaning, these parents provide love, food, and safety, but they leave children to entertain themselves and grow naturally without all the micromanagement.
Which historically was just called childhood.
Exactly. But in today's hyper-competitive, human capital-obsessed world, natural growth is suddenly deemed negligent by societal standards.
Oh, wow. So you're judged for just letting your kid be a kid.
Yes. This forces everyone to try and adopt the incredibly expensive, time-consuming model of concerted cultivation.
And that is exactly where the financial traps spring shed. Because if you want to cultivate your child's success, you have to buy your way into the right environments.
Yes, you do.
Let's look at the mechanics of how that works. Wealthy families can accumulate financial assets to guarantee their child's success. They utilize things like 529 plans, right?
Right.
Which are tax-advantaged savings accounts that allow their money to grow tax-free, specifically for education. They literally have the tax code working in their favor to optimize their children.
Meanwhile, lower and middle-income families don't have thousands of dollars to dump into investment accounts. Instead, they are pushed to rely on heavy debt.
Just to keep up.
Exactly. Because public schools in the United States are largely funded by local property taxes, the only way to access a free, quote-unquote, good public school is to buy a highly inflated house in a specific affluent zip code.
That's wild. So parents are taking on massive 30-year mortgages as a hidden form of tuition.
Exactly, putting themselves on the brink of financial ruin just to give their kids a shot.
And the demographics of who bears this debt reveal some really harsh truths about racial inequality. The source explicitly points out that Black families disproportionately take on education debt.
Yes, due to historical factors like redlining, many Black families were locked out of generational housing wealth.
Right. So when it comes time to invest in their child's human capital for college, they just don't have equity to borrow against.
No, they don't.
So instead, parents take on high-interest student loans, like parent PLS loans, which actively sabotages their own retirement and severely widens the existing racial wealth gap.
The systemic failure is also incredibly evident when you look at families raising children with special needs.
Oh, I can only imagine.
In a privatized model of childrearing, where every family is essentially an island, the burden of securing occupational therapy, navigating individualized education programs, fighting bureaucratic healthcare battles,
It's endless.
it falls entirely on the parents' shoulders. Society simply washes its hands of them, forcing these families to bear disproportionate, crushing financial and emotional burdens entirely alone.
When you look at the mechanics of all this, the mortgages, the loans, the sheer isolation, it just feels incredibly predatory.
It really does.
You step back and look at the multi-billion-dollar parenting industry. I mean, we have apps that track every micro-ounce your baby eats. We have specialized developmental gadgets, private tutoring conglomerates.
Selling you solutions to a problem they created.
Exactly. This entire industry doesn't just exist to help. It actively thrives on manufactured mom guilt and parental anxiety. They are literally monetizing the panic.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see the real danger of relying on these industry solutions.
What's the danger?
The market sells you a meditation app or a time-saving gadget promising to cure your burnout. But these are superficial Band-Aid fixes.
They don't change the system.
No. A gadget cannot fix a society that demands you treat your child like a startup company. These consumer tools completely ignore the underlying structural norms that cause the burnout in the first place.
You cannot outbuy a systemic failure.
Exactly.
It's wild to think about the journey we've taken on this deep dive. We started with tired parents and ended up uncovering a century-long shift in economic philosophy that basically turned our living rooms into high-stress corporate branches.
It's a huge perspective shift.
It is. So let's synthesize all of this. If you are listening to this and you feel that bone-deep, treading water, parental exhaustion, the main takeaway from Nina Bandelje's research is this. Your exhaustion is not a signal of your individual inadequacy. You are not failing at the job.
The job description itself is fundamentally flawed.
Right?
Unveiling how these historical, economic, and social forces create parental burnout proves that we have normalized a completely unsustainable standard. Raising children was never meant to be grueling, competitive, isolated labor. And kids were never meant to be private investment projects optimized for market returns.
We really need to rethink that old cliche, it takes a village.
Yes, absolutely.
Because for so long, we've individualized that phrase to mean, oh, I need to hire a babysitter so I can go to work. Or I need to coordinate a carpool.
Outsourcing.
Right. But true village-level support doesn't just mean finding someone to watch the kids. It means true societal investment.
Systemic changes.
Yes. It means shared community norms that don't demand emotional perfection. It means robust social protections, like equitable school funding and accessible health care. So families aren't forced into crippling debt just to participate in society.
Right, so we aren't leaving individual, burnt-out parents to shoulder the entire burden in total isolation. We need to build a system that supports raising future members of society. And this raises a really important question. I want to leave you, the listener, with one final lingering thought to ponder today.
Oh, go for it.
We've spent a lot of time discussing how the human capitalization of children has driven this public health crisis, but imagine if we collectively reversed that.
Okay, reversed it how?
If we stopped viewing childhood as a high-stakes, resume-building exercise, and instead truly respected it as a phase of intrinsic, unquantifiable value.
Wow.
If we did that, how would that force us to redesign not just our chaotic family weekend schedules, but the very structure of our modern economy and workforce?
That is a massive question. If we change how we value childhood, we have to change the world built around it.
Exactly.
Because right now, we are trying to solve a systemic crisis with better planners and sleep training apps, and it simply isn't working. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning those impossible standards. Give yourselves a little grace out there, and we'll catch you next time.